Hello and welcome to Newfoundland and Labrador Studies 2205. This is Unit 1 on Culture, Section 3, Lesson 1. I'm Miss Fleming, and of course I am here with you for this course. Let's get started. So, it is important to learn about the process of change, the significance of change, and the various sources of change. Throughout this section, which is the final section for Unit 1, we are going to be exploring all of the elements of culture change. It's important to note that culture is always evolving. It is not a stagnant thing. The first thing we're going to talk about is called time-space compression. And you see, over the last 100 years, there has been significant cultural change thanks to the influence and innovations of different cultures having easier access to one another through communication and transportation. As technologies improve, the speed of communication and transportation systems increase, and this is known as time-space compression. So time-space compression influences interactions between cultures. They occur more often, and change happens more frequently than ever before. Before we get any further into talking about culture change, we need to develop a vocabulary on how to describe culture changes. There are three ways to describe how culture changes: innovation, diffusion, and large-scale interactions. The first is innovation. This is change that originates inside of a culture. It refers to the emergence of new ideas, inventions, and technologies. Typically, this occurs in response to a need or a want, and the term cultural hearth refers to a location where an innovation first occurs before it spreads to other areas. Newfoundland and Labrador is a cultural hearth for cod nets. Cod nets have changed significantly throughout history, but it was in Newfoundland and Labrador that an innovation in cod nets occurred, and we now have what's considered the modern cod trap. The next way to describe cultural change is diffusion. Diffusion occurs when an idea, object, or technique is introduced to a culture from an external source, so not from within the culture. It could happen when a person returns from another area with an innovation from another cultural background. Or it can occur when someone from a different cultural background moves to a new area. This term can also refer to when an innovation spreads within a particular culture. I have two examples for diffusion, and the first is a negative one, unfortunately, and that is the Spanish flu. If you haven't heard of that before, it was an occurrence of influenza in the early 20th century, and it was actually considered an epidemic. This occurred in the early 20th century. It ended up spreading because of the First World War, and also because of bringing supplies and different other things to places. We will go into more detail about the Spanish flu epidemic and its effect on Newfoundland and Labrador, specifically the Inuit culture of Labrador, where unfortunately 1/3 of the Inuit population of Labrador was completely wiped out because of Spanish flu. It seems strange now to suddenly flip to a positive example, but a positive example of diffusion is pizza. We know that pizza is pretty much everywhere now, all over North America, Europe, Asia, all over the world, just about, almost. Pizza originated in a particular culture, and then it spread as people spread throughout the world. The final cultural change we're going to talk about is called large-scale interactions. This occurs when two cultures interact and their cultures are forever changed. The degree of change will vary, but ultimately both cultures are forever different. Acculturation is the experience of one culture dominating another. This is a radical alteration of one culture due to the size or technical capacity of the dominating culture. When two cultures interact and both groups change equally, it is referred to as transculturation. So the first example I have is of acculturation, and that is of Indigenous schools and the effect of colonialism. As settlers, specifically Euro-Christian settlers, spread throughout Canada and Newfoundland and Labrador, they brought with them the notion of colonialism, Christianity, and also educating Indigenous children outside of their home, taking them from their families. This photo here is of the Moravian Church and Moravian Mission School in Makkovik. The Euro-Christian culture and colonialism dominated over Indigenous culture in various areas throughout Canada. And, of course, as part of Truth and Reconciliation, we are still working on righting the wrongs of those particular experiences. There's also the example of transculturation is media in Canada and the United States. Both groups and both countries have affected each other fairly equally, where news outlets from Canada and the US are able to be viewed throughout all of North America, and also television shows that are produced in Canada and the United States are aired in both countries. The last concept I would like to talk to you about is called cause and consequence. Every change has a cause, and every change has a consequence because of that cause. A consequence of an event may be obvious and immediate, or it could be more subtle and only deciphered over a long period of time. A good example of this is during the First World War and the involvement of Newfoundlanders. Now, I say Newfoundlanders, of course, because at that particular time we were referred to as the colony of Newfoundland. The cause we have here is the colony of Newfoundland participating in the First World War. But there were many consequences of that. One of them being 1,300 Newfoundlanders and Labradorians died in conflict. The participation of it, including like training, uniforms, food, salaries, etc., cost over $30 million. Now think about that. That's a lot of money now, let alone over 100 years ago. And also, then this debt contributed to the fall of responsible government in the colony of Newfoundland, which we will go into more detail in Unit 2. So, now it's time to review. What I would like you to do is to complete the activities in Brightspace that I have for you. Think about change and how culture has changed for you. And I'll see you in the next lesson.